the meagre handouts. How do you justify to hard-working men and women across Britain, working people, by the way, working people, who would recoil to hear you say meagre when these people are afforded things that hard-working Brits couldn't even dream of? We can talk about Brexit in a minute. How do you ally what you just said?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Julian Discourse. Before we dive in, please make sure to like and subscribe. Have you ever tried to point out a massive leak in your roof, only for someone to look at you and say, well, the rain is actually a good thing? That is exactly what happens here. Watch Jeremy Kyle completely corner Lib Dem MP Christine Jardine over the UK border crisis. When Kyle points out that British citizens are struggling while the government hands out taxpayer money to unvetted migrants, watch her panic, deflect, and literally claim these handouts are just meager. It perfectly exposes an out-of-touch political class that prioritizes defending open border ideology over the struggles of the working class. Watch this.
I haven't mentioned Nigel Farage all morning. I don't want to talk about Nigel Farage. I want to talk about the Liberal Democrats. I just want to pick up on a couple of things. You blame Brexit for the movement. Hear me out. You don't in any way blame, you call the meagre, that's what you just said, the meagre handouts. How do you justify to hard-working men and women across Britain, working people, by the way, working people, who would recoil to hear you say meagre when these people are afforded things that hard-working Brits couldn't even dream of? We can talk about Brexit in a minute. How do you ally what you just said to British people who ring in the thousands and say to me, I cannot even survive hardly at the moment, genuinely, and these people are getting handouts?
You don't need to tell me. Jeremy, you don't need to tell me that. I'm an MP. I help people every week who cannot afford to pay their bills.
What do they say about this? What do your constituents say about it,
If you would let me speak, I would say, I talk to people every week. They come to me for help. I know what it's like. I don't sit in, London. I am here in my constituency working with people. I know the damage that has been done to people in this country by bad government over the past 10 years. I know the damage that's been done to the cost of living. I know that what we need is good governance. And what I said was that we need people who come to this country to work and that to make a contribution, specifically because we have a problem. We can't afford to the situation that we're in at the moment. So what I would say is that, yes, I want people who come here to work. I don't want them to be given handouts. I want them to work. And I have said that consistently the entire night.
Christian, you're going to tell me I'm not letting you speak. You have to be able to talk in facts. I'm sorry, you have to. Yesterday we had the Home Office. I am talking in facts with the greatest respect. You cannot come out with comments like, some of them are escaping persecution. So tell me yesterday, in your mind, important we get it, 752 migrants reached the UK yesterday, biggest channel crossings of the year. 4, and I touched upon it all morning, the human disaster, 4 died for Christ's sake. That's awful. The Home Office put out, Christine, we are aware of posts circulating online that claim French law enforcement are failing to prevent it. We say, this is the UK-French cooperation, has already stopped 46,000 attempted crossings. So that's what the Home Office put out. Now, the Centre for Migration Control then put out some figures, and this wasn't reported highly, but they said that the government has claimed it's removed or deported 70,000 people, Christine. 35% of that 70,000 left without officials even knowing that A, they were here, B, they knew their names, or B, that they'd come in the first place. And 26%, Christine, I'm not blaming you, I'm trying to have the conversation, were paid to leave. When will we drop this ludicrous belief that these people who cross 7 unwar-torn countries without their wives and kids come to the United Kingdom to apparently work? They come because we give them far more, Christine, surely you can agree this, than any other country, which is why they come here, don't they?
an argument you need to take up with the government, but what I said was that we need to disincentivise it. We need to break the gangs who are making money out of people coming here. That is what we need to do, and that is what we need the government to do. And we have had 10 years of government that didn't do that, and that is the problem. And we have to allow this government the opportunity to do it. Now, they say, as you said, they say that the figures are lower, that they are coming down, that their policies are working. Now, I will believe the evidence. When we get the next round of figures, I will believe what the evidence tells me. But what we have to do is we have to recognise that, as you said yourself...
It's important to get all sides. By the way, fleeing persecution from Morocco. Jet2 are still advertising last-minute holidays, by the way. But here's the point I wanted to ask you. Why do people of a certain political ilk, and let me just say, I have everybody on this show, and that's important. Why do you start every sentence with, hear me out, please, there will be people who are coming here who are fleeing persecution? Why don't you start your sentence ever, people who are perhaps not on the right of politics, and I include Labour and the Liberal Democrats and others, the Greens, why do you start with there are people fleeing persecution rather than there are hordes of people coming to this country who are not fleeing persecution, who have not brought their wives and kids and are having their backsides wiped by a country, hear me out, that cannot afford it, they don't have a right to be here, and actually and I hate to use it, Christine, so you'll jump down my throat, the indigenous population, the very working people that Labour and all the left apparently care about, are struggling as a result. Why won't you start a sentence with people are coming here to take advantage of us? Why will you not say that?
But why will you not say that among those people are people who are fleeing persecution? Because I recognise that not everything is simple.
I recognise that of the 752 yesterday, no, I would absolutely guarantee, I don't know, so tell me if I'm wrong, please somebody phone me, how many of the 752 were escaping persecution? I'd wager very, 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 very few.
We find that out by talking to them. And yet, the problem is the gangs. The problem is the gangs.
That's what Starmer said.
The government has to break the gangs. They have said they will do that, and we have to hold them to that. That the problem is that people are being encouraged by these gangs who make money out of them. They're, dying in the channel, and that is a huge problem. And nobody, Jeremy, nobody on any side of politics thinks that that is acceptable.
No, I agree with you.
None of us.
Welcome back to reality. Lib Dem MP Christine Jardine's response perfectly encapsulates the massive, unbridgeable disconnect between the insulated political establishment and the working class public. When Jeremy Kyle confronts her with the undeniable fact that British citizens are financially drowning, she immediately gets defensive and attempts to minimize the massive taxpayer-funded benefits handed to illegal arrivals. Let's bring some actual educational facts to the table and dismantle this open border mythology. Jardine repeatedly falls back on the standard activist talking point that these individuals are fleeing persecution. But look at a map. To reach the beaches of Dover, these migrants have already traveled through half a dozen safe, prosperous European democracies, countries like France, Italy, and Spain. Under the 1951 Refugee Convention, genuine asylum seekers are expected to claim safe harbor in the first safe country they reach. They do not traverse multiple safe nations and pay criminal smuggling gangs thousands of pounds to cross the English Channel simply for safety. They come to the UK because of the pull factors, and the cost of those pull factors is staggering. By late 2023 and early 2024, the UK Home Office admitted it was bleeding roughly 8 million every single day just to house asylum seekers in budget hotels. Furthermore, the state's ability to enforce its borders has completely collapsed. As Jeremy Kyle accurately cited, the government's boast of deporting 70,000 people is a complete statistical illusion. According to the Center for Migration Control, 30% of those individuals left without officials even knowing who they were or that they were in the country, and over a quarter were literally paid taxpayer money to leave voluntarily. That is not border enforcement. That is a taxpayer-funded travel agency for people who deliberately circumvented the law. This exchange matters because it shatters the social contract. You cannot look the working public in the eye, demand they pay the highest tax burdens in decades, force them to endure the strain on their local communities, and then dismiss the free housing given to undocumented men as meager. The establishment is protecting a broken romanticized ideology over the physical and economic security of its own citizens. The public is completely exhausted by the spin, and they can see right through the excuses.